Find your comfortable place now. Let the noise of your world fade away into a distant hum, a forgotten frequency. Settle into the quiet, into the stillness that you have earned at the end of this day. Tonight you are not just a listener, an observer from a distant future. You are a guardian, you are the fire keeper. And the life of your people, your entire world, rests in the palm of your hands, cupped around a small, precious pile of glowing embers. Outside your sanctuary of stone, the air is changing. Can you feel it? It's a deep and penetrating cold, a cold that whispers promises of more than it speaks of a long and challenging night. So close your eyes, let your breathing slow and step out of time. You awaken not to the cold, but to a feeling of deep-seated responsibility, a weight that settles in your chest before your eyes even open. It's your third night as the fire keeper, the third cycle of darkness where the clan's survival has been your solitary vigil. Before you in the shallow, soot-blackened pit at the center of the great cave, the heart of your clan pulses, a bed of orange and red embers, glowing with a soft, hypnotic light. They breathe, a slow, rhythmic pulse of warmth in the immense, chilling dark. Yesterday, as the sun bled its last colors across the horizon, Elder Oma passed this duty to you. Her hand, a roadmap of wrinkles and scars, rested on your shoulder. Her voice, thin and dry like autumn leaves rustling across stone, had been firm. "The fire is our blood," she had said, her eyes meeting yours, holding them with an intensity that belied her age. "It warms us, it cooks our food, it keeps the great beasts at bay. It is our life. It must not die." You feel that weight now, in the profound stillness before the dawn, a silence broken only by the soft snores and murmurs of your sleeping kin. There are 27 of them, wrapped in thick furs of bear and bison, their forms like shadowed hills in the flickering light. They are your family, your world. The air you breathe is thick with their scent, of wood smoke, of sweat, of the animal hides they wear, a familiar and comforting perfume of existence. You listen to the gentle hiss of a particularly bright ember, a tiny sound in the vast silence. You listen to your own breathing, a slow and steady rhythm that you consciously match to the pulsing of the coals. In and out, the fire breathes with you, you are connected. This is not a task, it is a communion. For these few hours between the last embers of yesterday and the first flame of tomorrow, you and this fire are one. A quiet urge, a primal instinct, pulls you from your reverie. You rise from your haunches, your muscles moving with a practiced silence. You are careful not to disturb the sleepers, your bare feet finding familiar paths on the cold, packed earth floor. You crawl silently towards the cave mouth, a gaping maw of deeper blackness against the shadowed gray of the interior. The pre-dawn air that greets you is different. It is wrong. Your senses, honed by a lifetime of paying attention, scream a warning. It doesn't just carry the usual smells of damp earth, of pine needles, of the distant, sleeping river. It smells sharp, clean in a way that feels sterile and dangerous. It smells heavy, as if the sky itself is pressing down upon the land. And then you notice the silence. The birds are quiet. In the half-light before dawn, the forest should be beginning to stir with a chorus of chirps and calls, a symphony of awakening. But there is nothing. A profound, unnatural stillness hangs over the landscape. A single, nervous chirp breaks the void, sharp and questioning, and is immediately swallowed by the silence that follows. It is as if the whole world is holding its breath. You look to the horizon, where the first hint of light should be appearing. Instead of the usual soft gray of morning, you see a wall of clouds, a bruised, violent purple gray, moving with an unnatural speed, churning and boiling like a pot of dark water. A knot of unease, cold and hard, tightens in the pit of your stomach. This is not the slow, predictable march of a season. This is an ambush. Pushing the feeling aside, you retreat back into the relative warmth of the cave. Fear is a luxury you cannot afford. Your task is here with the embers. Panic will not feed the flame. You return to the fire pit, your mind clearing, focusing only on the immediate, on the delicate and sacred task at hand. Your hands steady now, Search through the carefully sorted piles of tinder you prepared yesterday. You select the driest, thinnest pieces of birch bark, their surfaces peeling like ancient scrolls. You find a handful of dried moss, fluffy and light as a cloud. This is a task of precision and patience. You lay the moss gently on the embers, like a mother placing a blanket on a sleeping child. Then the birch bark, creating a tiny, airy structure over the most promising glow. You lower your head, your face close to the coals, feeling their faint warmth on your cheeks. You purse your lips and release a slow, steady stream of life-giving air. Not a hard blow, which would scatter the precious heat, but a gentle, persistent whisper, the breath of a god coaxing life into the world. You watch, your focus absolute. The edge of the bark blackens, curls inward like a dying leaf. A thin wisp of smoke, acrid and hopeful, spirals upwards. You continue your steady breath. And then a tiny flame, no bigger than your thumbnail, flickers into existence. A fragile golden miracle in the vast dark. A wave of relief, so profound it is almost painful, washes over you. You do not celebrate. The work is not done. This infant flame is vulnerable. You nurture it, your movements practiced, reverent. You offer it the smallest twigs, dry and brittle, placing them with the care of a nest-building bird. The tiny flame licks at the offering, tastes it, and then embraces it. A soft crackle, the first true sound of the new day's fire, echoes in the silent cave. It is the most beautiful sound in the world. You add slightly larger sticks, building a small cone of fuel, always leaving space for the fire to breathe. Slowly, carefully, you are building the heart of your clan back to its full strength. As the fire grows, so does the wind outside. What was a low whistle has now become a mournful moan, a sound that seems to snake its way through invisible. A sudden, violent gust sweeps into the cave mouth, a physical blow of cold air that makes the new flames dance wildly. It carries with it not rain, but something else. A single wet snowflake lands on the back of your hand. It is not the light, fluffy powder of deep winter. It is heavy, wet. It melts instantly, a cold shock against your warm skin. Then another lands on your cheek, and another on the fur at your shoulder. The hunters, stirring from their sleep by the growing warmth, sense the change. They look towards the entrance, their faces, like yours, etched with confusion and concern. The wind howls now, a furious, predatory cry, and a flurry of white dances in the opening. The world outside is disappearing into a swirling vortex of snow. This is not a gentle snow. This is a surprise attack from the sky, a sudden, violent assault. The low, collective murmur that ripples through the awakening clan is not one of wonder, but of deep, shared apprehension. The day has not yet begun, and already you are under siege. There is no discussion, no shouted orders. None are needed. In the face of a shared threat, the clan moves as one organism, each member knowing their role. The hunters, strong and swift, move to the large, prepared animal hides that are kept rolled and tied near the entrance. These are the skins of the great bison, cured until they are stiff and heavy, a movable wall for the worst of weather. Working together, their movements synchronized by years of shared struggle, they unroll the heavy, stiff leather. You watch as they stretch it across the lower half of the cave entrance, their muscles straining. The sound of the heavy hide scraping against stone is a grim, determined sound. They lash the edges to rock pegs that have been driven into the walls for this very purpose, pulling the leather taut until it thumps like a great drum. The world outside, the swirling white chaos, disappears behind a wall of skin. The howling of the wind is instantly muffled, reduced to a dull, persistent roar. The cave is plunged into a deeper twilight, the only light now coming from your fire. A new, more profound sense of isolation descends. You are sealed in. You are safe from the wind, but you are also trapped. The morning hunt is cancelled. The planned gathering of roots and berries is cancelled. The day's plans, the simple and reassuring rhythm of life, dissolve into a single, stark objective: endure. Your eyes, drawn by a terrible premonition, turn to the woodpile. It's stacked neatly against the cave wall, a comforting sight just moments ago. Now it looks terrifyingly small. It was a supply meant for a few calm nights, a stockpile to be replenished daily. It was never intended for a siege. And then you see it. A detail so small and so horrifying that your breath catches. The wind, with its incredible power, is driving a fine, powdery snow through the tiny gaps at the edges of the high door. A light dusting of white, like a shroud, is settling on the edge of the woodpile. You watch as a single flake lands on a log, hesitates for a second, and then melts, leaving a dark spot of moisture. Your heart sinks with a physical weight. The fuel for the clan's heart, the very substance of its blood, is being poisoned by the cold. This is the true nature of the crisis. The enemy is not just outside the door. It is already inside, silent and insidious. Elder Oma, now fully awake, seems to have reached the same conclusion. Her face is a mask of calm, but you see the focused intensity. She moves with a slow, deliberate grace to the small alcove where your food is stored. The quiet inventory begins. She inspects the bundles of dried meat, jerky stripped from mammoth and deer, hard and dark. She lifts the heavy leather bags filled with nuts and dried berries, gauging their weight in her hands. She uncorks a clay pot and sniffs at the rendered animal fat within, a precious source of energy. Her movements are economical, precise, her face unreadable. She is not just counting, she is calculating. How many days, how many meals can 27 people, trapped and inactive, survive on this? The children, sensing the profound shift in the atmosphere, are quiet. Their usual morning games, their tumbles and happy shrieks are forgotten. They sit in small, silent groups, their wide eyes watching the adults. The cave is filled with a new kind of silence, the silence of waiting, of uncertainty. You turn your attention back to the fire, the knot in your stomach tightening. The weight of Oma's words, "The fire is our blood," feels heavier than ever before. You place another log on the flames, a piece from the top of the pile, one you hope is still dry. It does not catch with the satisfying, crisp crackle you long to hear. It hisses, a soft, sputtering sizzle that sounds like defeat. A small plume of white smoke, not the healthy gray of a good burn, rises from the wood. Damp, it's already happening. You feel a dozen pairs of eyes on you on the fire. This is no longer the peaceful, meditative ritual of the dawn. This is a battle. This is your first true test as fire keeper. Your responsibility is no longer just to remember a tradition. It is to fight a war against the encroaching cold and damp. With a long, sharpened stick you use to tend the flames, you carefully reposition the hissing log. You try to give it more air, to prop it up so the heat from the glowing coals beneath can attack the moisture. You shift the embers, coaxing the hottest ones to cluster around the damp wood. Your every movement is slow, deliberate. You are not just feeding a fire, you are performing a delicate surgery on a struggling heart. The hissing continues, a relentless, taunting sound in the quiet cave. You hold your breath, focusing all your will, all your hope on that single, smoking piece of wood, praying for it to catch, to burn, to live. Time becomes a fluid, meaningless thing. There is no sun to mark its passage, no lengthening of shadows across the land. Your world is reduced to this single stone chamber, a womb of rock sealed against the raging storm. The only clock is the slow, relentless burning of wood. The only measure of the day is the shrinking of your precious pile. The flickering orange of the fire is your sun, your moon, your stars. It casts deep, dancing shadows on the cave walls, shadows that move and writhe like ancient beasts from a storyteller's tale. The world is the fire, and you listen to the storm, a constant, muffled roar from behind the bison-hide door. It is a living entity, a great white beast throwing its weight against your shelter. You begin to learn its rhythms. The low, deep-chested growl of the sustained winds, the sudden, violent shrieks as a gust finds a crevice to assault, the brief moments of deceptive calm that feel more menacing than the noise. And you listen to the other sounds of your confinement. The soft, rhythmic drip of melting snow finding its way through a crack in the cave's ceiling, a tiny, persistent metronome counting away the hours. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop is a reminder of the insidious damp that threatens your fire. The hours pass in a state of watchful tension. The hunters sit sharpening their flint spear tips, the repetitive chip, chip, chip of stone against stone, a strangely comforting sound of preparedness. The women mend tears in worn furs, their bone needles rising and falling in a silent, steady rhythm. No one speaks much. Words are an energy you cannot afford to waste. Every action is subdued, conserving warmth, conserving hope. The air grows stale, thick with the smell of too many bodies in too small a space, of damp wool, and the ever-present smoke that hangs in a thin layer near the ceiling. To fight the encroaching cold and the deeper, more insidious chill of fear, Elder Oma begins a story. Her voice, though thin, is a thread of strength that weaves through the tense silence. She does not tell a story of a great hunt or a heroic battle against a rival clan. She speaks of the great cold, a time from long ago, passed down through generations. A story of a winter that did not end, of a sun that hid its face for many moons. She tells of how your ancestors survived, not through strength of arms but through strength of spirit. They survived by huddling together in the deepest parts of their cave, sharing body heat, their breath mingling in the frozen air. They survived by telling stories, by keeping their minds alive when their bodies were failing. Her voice is low and steady, another kind of fire, a fire of memory and wisdom that warms the space between you. You listen, enraptured like the children, and you realize she is not just telling a story. She is giving instructions. She is reminding you all how to survive. Her words paint pictures in the firelight. You can almost see them, your ancient relatives, their faces gaunt, their eyes bright in the darkness, their voices weaving tales to hold the despair at bay. You feel a connection to them, a sense of a long, unbroken chain of survival stretching back into the mists of time. They endured, and so will you. Her story is a gift, a tool as vital as any flint knife or bone needle. It is the tool that sharpens the will. Then a new sound cuts through the rhythm of Oma's voice. A child, Nari, coughs. It is not a small tickle in the throat. It is a dry, hacking sound that echoes unnervingly in the enclosed space. It is a sound of deep, chest-rattling cold. Her mother, huddled beside her, instantly pulls the child closer into her furs, placing a worried hand on her forehead. Every head in the cave turns towards the sound. The story stops. The air in the cave, already cold, now feels sharp with a new. It is damp and stale, a perfect breeding ground for sickness. You look from Nari's small, flushed face back to your sputtering fire. The connection is immediate, undeniable. The fire is not just for warmth. It is for health. It is the dry heart that fights the damp sickness of the world. A sputtering fire means a sick child. A sick child in these conditions can quickly become a weak clan. A profound, hardening resolve settles within you, solid as the Oma's words, the child's cough, the hissing log, they all converge into a single sharp point of focus. The fire will not die. It cannot. That hardening resolve flows from your mind into your hands. The time for quiet vigil is over. Now is the time for work. The woodpile with its dusting of snow is a sprawling enemy, and you must dismantle it with care. You select one of the larger logs, a heavy piece of seasoned oak that would normally burn for half the night. Now its size is a liability. Too much of it is exposed to the damp air. You wedge it against a large stone near the fire pit and find another heavy, sharp-edged rock to use as a mallet. The first blow rings out in the cave, a loud crack that makes several people jump. Then another and another. This is hard, strenuous work. Your shoulders ache and the jarring impact travels up your arms. But with each strike, you are fighting back. You are not passively waiting for the cold to claim you. Splinters fly. Finally, with a great tearing sound, the log splits in two, exposing the dry, pale heartwood within. A small victory, but a vital one. You take the two halves and begin the process again, breaking them down into smaller and smaller pieces. Every splinter, every sliver of bark is now precious. You are no longer just a fire keeper, tending the whole. You are a miser, a hoarder of moments, counting out slivers of warmth against an endless, encroaching winter. The others watch you, their faces illuminated in the flickering, unsteady light. They see the determination in your movements, the sweat on your brow despite the chill. No one speaks, but their shared gaze is a silent current of support. They understand what you are doing. You are not just breaking wood, you are breaking the spell of helplessness. But it is not enough. The dampness has a pervasive, insidious strength. Even the newly exposed heartwood seems to drink the moisture from the air. The fire you so carefully feed still sputters. It consumes the wood, but gives back only a sullen, grudging heat. The circle of warmth around it, the families sitting furthest away begin to draw closer, a slow, silent migration towards the dying heart. The circle of people becomes a tight, dense knot of bodies, shoulders pressing against shoulders, all eyes fixed on the struggling flames. The shadows in the back of the cave respond by growing larger, deeper, more menacing. They seem to creep forward, swallowing the familiar shapes of tools and sleeping rolls, claiming more territory as the light retreats. The cave, once a sanctuary, now feels like it is being slowly squeezed by the darkness. You become desperate. You begin to search for anything that will burn. Your hands run over the dry-packed earth near the walls, searching for forgotten scraps. You find a small, forgotten bundle of dried moss, tucked away for starting fires in better times. You offer it to the embers. It burns with a sudden, ferocious whoosh, a brilliant flash of light and hope that lasts for a fleeting moment and then is gone, leaving behind only a wisp of smoke and the same sullen glow. It was a firecracker, not a meal, a false promise. You try feeding it the driest, innermost splinters from the logs you broke, tiny pieces you are certain, but they land on coals that are no longer hot enough. They smoke and sizzle, their potential energy turning to vapor instead of flame. It is in this moment of near despair that you feel a presence beside you. It is Elder Oma. She has moved with such silence you did not notice her approach. She kneels beside you at the fire pit, her old bones creaking softly. For a long moment, she simply stares into the coals, her face a mask of ancient knowledge. Then she reaches into a small leather pouch tied at her waist. A pouch you know holds sacred things, healing herbs and items of power. Your breath catches. Her movements are slow, reverent. She opens the pouch. Inside, nestled in soft rabbit fur, is a hard, yellowed lump of animal fat. It is rendered bear fat, carefully saved from the last great hunt of the autumn. It is a treasure. It is used for treating deep wounds, for waterproofing new boots, for a final burst of energy on a long hunt. To burn it as mere fuel is unthinkable, a sign of the most desperate of times. She takes the lump of fat from the pouch. Its surface is cool and waxy. She holds it in her palm for a moment, as if weighing its worth against the lives in this cave. Then she looks at you, her dark eyes reflecting the dying embers. She extends her hand. "The fire is hungrier than we are," she whispers, her voice a low, raspy sound that is almost lost in the hiss of the damp wood. "Feed it." She places the precious lump in your hand. It feels heavy, a solid weight of sacrifice. This is the last resort, the final gamble. If this doesn't work, the fire will shrink into nothing, and the long, slow cold will win. Your hands tremble slightly as you hold the lump of fat. The fate of your clan feels slick and cold in your palm. You take your sharpest flint knife and with deliberate care, carve a small sliver from the hard, yellowed block. The others in the cave, sensing the gravity of the moment, the only sounds are the sputtering of the wood and the distant, muffled roar of the storm. Even Nari's coughing has subsided, as if she too is holding her breath. You take the sliver of fat and, leaning in close, place it directly on the largest, hottest ember at the heart of the coals. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happens. The fat just sits there, an offering on a dying altar. The knot in your stomach twists into a cold, hard stone. Did you wait too long? Are the embers already too weak? Then a tiny wisp of smoke rises. The fat begins to melt, a clear liquid pooling around its edges, sizzling softly as it touches the hot coal. The sizzle intensifies. A thick, oily smoke billows upwards, carrying a rich, savory scent that feels shockingly out of place, the smell of a feast in a time of famine. And then with a sudden violent whoosh, a bright hot yellow flame erupts from the coals. It is not the weak orange flame of the damp wood. This flame is greedy, vibrant, intensely alive. It roars, a sound of pure energy, of life devouring life to create more life. A collective sigh of pure, unadulterated relief ripples through the cave, a sound as loud and powerful as the flame itself. Hope, which had dwindled to a tiny spark, has just exploded back into a bonfire. The fire roars, a triumphant beast reborn. It consumes the offering of fat with a ferocious appetite, its heat pushing back the cold, its light banishing the encroaching shadows. The circle of huddled bodies visibly relaxes, people leaning back, letting the blessed warmth soak into their chilled bones. You carefully add more slivers of fat-soaked wood, and they now catch instantly, burning with a clean, hot flame. But in its newfound ferocity, the fire becomes unpredictable, wild. In the heart of the blaze, a pocket of moisture in a log instantly turns to steam and explodes with a sharp crack. A superheated spark, a tiny orange comet trailing a tail of smoke, arcs through the air. You watch it, mesmerized for a half-second, its trajectory a beauty. It flies past you, over the heads of the mesmerized children, and lands on a pile of dry sleeping furs a few feet away, where a family had hastily pushed them to get closer to the fire. At first there is nothing. Then a thin wisp of smoke, almost invisible, curls up from the dark fur. A single, sharp gasp comes. Your eyes lock onto the spot. A tiny, growing circle of orange begins to glow on the surface of the hide. Fire, the savior, the heart of the clan, is threatening to become the destroyer. The very thing you fought so hard to nurture is about to turn on you, to consume your shelter from within. The threat is no longer the cold outside, but the uncontrolled heat inside. There is no panic. Panic is a death sentence. There is only action, swift and instinctive. One of the hunters, Kale, a young man known for his speed, moves with startling grace. Before you can even rise to your feet, he is there. He grabs another hide, one that was closer to the entrance and still damp from the melting snow. In one fluid motion, he brings it down and smothers the... There is a loud thwump as the heavy, damp leather slaps against the fur, followed by a final, angry hiss as the fledgling flame is extinguished. The smell of singed hair and burned leather fills the air, acrid and sharp, a pungent reminder of the disaster that was just averted. The danger is over as quickly as it began. Kale lifts the damp hide, revealing a blackened, ugly scar on the sleeping fur beneath. He looks at it, then looks at you, his face calm, and gives a short, sharp nod. The unspoken message is clear: danger averted, but be watchful. You look from the controlled, life-giving heart fire back to the smothered spot on the fur. You have learned a new, vital lesson in the span of a few heartbeats. The fire is blood, Oma had said. But blood, you now understand, can be wild. It can run hot and out of control. It must not just be kept. It must be tamed. Your responsibility is not just to be a keeper, but a master. The long night passes in a state of heightened vigil. The fire, fed by small, judicious pieces of fat-soaked wood, holds steady, a beacon of controlled power. You do not let it roar, but you do not let it shrink. You maintain a delicate balance, a truce between warmth and safety. You listen to Nari's breathing, and to your relief, the dry, hacking cough has softened, eased by the dry warmth that now fills the cave. The storm continues its assault, but its rage feels distant now, held at bay by your crackling sentinel. Towards the time when the dawn should be breaking, you notice a change. It is not something you see, but something you feel, or rather, don't feel. The howling of the wind, the constant, oppressive pressure against the hide door has faded. The relentless drumming of snow and ice has ceased. You listen intently, straining your ears. There is only the soft crackle of your fire. The beast has moved on. A profound, deep silence has fallen over the world, a silence so complete it feels like a physical presence. Kale, who has been keeping watch with you, meets your eyes across the fire. He heard it too. The end of the... Hesitantly, you both rise and go to the entrance. Your fingers, stiff with cold, fumble with the frozen leather knots that hold the bison hide in place. You unlash them one by one. With Kale's help, you pull the heavy, stiff hide back, just a few inches at first, peering into the new day. You are not met with the swirling gray gloom you expected. You are met with a light so pure, so brilliant, it makes you squint and throw a hand up to shield your eyes. The storm has passed, the sun is out, and the world has been utterly and completely transformed. Every tree branch, every rock, every contour of the land is covered in a thick, pristine blanket of white. The snow is impossibly deep, smoothing all the harsh edges of the landscape, and the air that flows into the cave is so cold it feels like you are breathing in pure crystal, but it is clean. It is new. The world has not been destroyed by the storm. It has been washed clean, reborn. As you and Kale pull the hide fully aside, a collective, soft gasp comes from the waking members of the clan as they witness the dazzling spectacle. The only sound is the musical drip of a single icicle, melting in the morning sun. You turn from the brilliant, blinding light of the new world and look back into the familiar twilight of the cave. Your eyes find their way back to the heart of it all. The fire is still there. A steady, warm glow in the fire pit. It is smaller now, the fat all but gone, but it is alive. It is a testament to your vigil. You survived. You and the 27 souls sleeping behind you survived. You did your duty. As you stand there, caught between the white world outside and the warm darkness within, Oma approaches. She places her weathered hand on your shoulder, the same gesture she used when she gave you this responsibility. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. She just looks from you to the fire and then back to you, and she nods. It is a slow, deep nod of acknowledgement, of respect. Her eyes, which have seen countless winters, are filled with a deep, ancient understanding. In that silent moment, a transfer is complete. You are no longer the apprentice, the boy tasked with a vigil. You are the fire keeper. The day will be hard. Hunting in snow this deep will be a challenge beyond measure. Finding dry wood will be a triumph in itself. But as the rest of the clan begins to stir, their faces full of awe as they step out into the blinding, beautiful new world, there is no fear. There is only the solid warmth of the fire at their backs and the unshakable promise of life in their hearts. You step forward out of the cave's shadow and feel the sun on your face for the first time in what feels like a lifetime. Its light is thin, but its warmth is real. You feel the shared breath of your people beside you, their presence a silent, powerful bond. You are safe, you are warm, you are home. Let this feeling of profound safety, of a crisis past, fill you now. Let the struggle of the long, dark night fade away into the peace of this new morning. The heart of your people still beats, steady and strong. The vigil is over, rest now. You have earned it, you have earned this peace. The profound relief of that first dawn gives way to the stark reality of survival. The world, while beautiful, is now a hostile landscape. The familiar paths to the river are gone, buried under a waist-deep blanket of white. The hunting grounds are a trackless, silent expanse. The first task, you all know, is wood. The fire, your savior through the night, is now a ravenous mouth that must be fed. The small pile you so carefully managed is nearly gone. You join Kale and two of the other strongest hunters, Boar and Fen. The work is brutal. You have no shovels, only your hands and flat pieces of bark to scoop away the heavy snow from the base of the pine trees, searching for fallen branches that might have been sheltered from the worst of the storm. Your hands quickly become numb, the searing pain of the cold so intense it feels like a burn. Each branch you unearth is a treasure, but most are damp, saturated with melted snow. Still you gather them, knowing that with time and the fire's help, they can be dried. For hours you work in a near-silent rhythm, a team bound by a single purpose. The only sounds are your own labored breathing, forming thick white clouds in the crystalline air, and the crunch and you learn to read the new landscape, to spot the subtle depressions that might indicate a larger, buried log, or the way the snow clings to the leeward side of a great rock, where dry kindling might be found. Historians still debate the exact methods of survival in such extreme conditions, But they all agree on one thing. It required an encyclopedic knowledge of the natural world, a knowledge that for you is as instinctive as breathing. You don't just see a tree. You see its potential for fuel, for shelter, for tools. As you work, you feel a new sense of your own body. The ordeal of the night, the lack of sleep, the intense physical labor now. Instead, you feel a strange clarity, a heightened awareness. Every sensation is sharp and immediate. The biting cold on your exposed cheeks, the ache in your shoulders, the satisfying heft of a solid piece of wood. You are acutely aware of the sun on your back, of Kale's steady presence beside you, of the distant, comforting plume of smoke rising from your cave. This is what it means to be alive, stripped of all comfort, all certainty, left with only the strength of your body and the will of your spirit. Late in the afternoon, Finn lets out a sharp cry, not of alarm, but of triumph. He has been digging at the base of a massive, uprooted pine tree, its root ball a tangled wall of earth and stone. In the hollow beneath it, sheltered from the storm, lies a trove of dry, seasoned wood. It's a miracle, a gift from the forest. The four of you work with renewed vigor, pulling out branch after branch, log after log, your spirits soaring. You have found a lifeline. The return to the cave is a slow, arduous procession. You each carry as much wood as your arms can hold, your bodies bent under the weight. Your path is a deep trench carved through the snow. As you approach the cave mouth, the children see you. They let out a cheer, a sound of pure joy that echoes in the still air. They run to meet you, their small hands grabbing at the smaller branches, eager to help. In this world, everyone has a purpose. Everyone contributes. Seeing their happy, hopeful faces, you feel a warmth spread through your chest that has nothing to do. It is the warmth of belonging, of purpose fulfilled. That night the fire roars. It is a fire of celebration, a fire of defiance. The cave is filled with light and warmth and the smell of drying pine. Oma oversees the careful preparation of the evening meal. The rations are still small, a strip of dried mammoth meat for each adult, a smaller piece for the children, a handful of toasted hazelnuts. But tonight it tastes like a feast. As you eat, huddled in the glorious, expansive heat, the stories begin. Boar, a hunter with a flair for the dramatic, recounts the day's labor, transforming the grueling search for. He mimes the great weight of the logs, the treachery of the deep snow, his face animated in the flickering light. The children listen, their eyes wide with excitement. You don't speak, but you watch. You watch the fire, its flames now a steady, confident dance. You are its keeper, but you also watch the faces around you. You see the deep lines of worry on a mother's brow begin to soften. You see the easy camaraderie of the hunters as they share a joke. You see Nari, her cheeks now a healthy pink, laughing at Boar's antics. The fire is the heart of the clan, but this community, this shared resilience, this love, this is its soul. The fire keeps the body warm, but the stories, the laughter, they keep the spirit from freezing. Later, when the meal is done and the cave has settled into a comfortable quiet, Oma comes to sit by you near the fire. She is working a piece of soft leather with a bone awl, her hands moving with a lifetime of practice. For a long time she is silent. Then, without looking up from her work, she speaks. "The first test is always the hardest," she says, her voice low and soft. "It is the one that shows you what you are made of, not of muscle and bone, but of will." The fire knows. It felt your will last night. You don't know what to say. You simply nod, your eyes fixed on the flames. "Many can keep a fire when the wood is dry and the air is still," she continues. "But it takes a true keeper to hold it through a storm. Not just a storm of wind and snow, the storms of fear, of sickness, of despair. You held it, you did not let it die." She finally looks up, and her eyes, which have seen so much, are filled with a quiet pride. "Your name will be remembered in the stories now, little keeper." Her words settle deep inside you. They are a gift more precious than the finest flint, more warming than the... It is the gift of recognition, of a place earned within the long, unbroken line of your people. You are not just a boy who was given a task. You are a link in the chain of survival. You look around the cave, at the sleeping forms of your family, their chests rising and falling in the gentle rhythm of sleep. You look at the steady, pulsing heart of the fire, and you feel a sense of peace so profound, so absolute, that it feels like the foundation of the world itself. The storm can rage, the cold can bite, but here in this circle of light with these people you are home, and you are the keeper of its heart. The weeks that follow the great feast are a time of relative prosperity and peace. The deep snows begin to recede under the strengthening sun, melting away in a slow, steady retreat that reveals the sleeping earth beneath. The world turns from a stark canvas of white to a mottled patchwork of brown and green. The river, which had been silenced by ice, begins to speak again, first in a gurgle, then a rush, and finally a roar as it throws off its winter shackles. Life is returning to the world, and with it, a sense of renewed hope and normalcy settles over the clan. Your role as firekeeper continues, but it is no longer a desperate battle. It is a comforting rhythm, the central beat of the clan's daily life. You greet the dawn by coaxing the flame to life, and you bid the world good night by banking the coals for their long slumber. But your world has expanded beyond the fire pit. You spend your days with the hunters, learning the ways of the forest. You learn which plants are the first to emerge from the thawing ground. Their tender shoots a welcome burst of green flavor after a winter of meat and nuts. You learn to make strong cordage from the inner bark of the nettle, a slow, meticulous process of scraping and twisting that yields a thread stronger than any animal sinew. You learn from Kale how to read the subtlest of signs. He shows you how a single, overturned leaf can indicate the passage of a deer, how a claw mark on a tree trunk can tell you the size of the bear that made it. He teaches you to move through the forest not as an intruder, but as a part of it, your steps silent, your senses open to the constant stream of information the world provides. Your mind, once focused solely on the life and death of a flame, now opens to the life and death of the entire ecosystem around. It's a transition many young people of your time would have made, from the hearth to the world, from keeper to provider. One afternoon, while tracking a herd of bison, you and Kale come across a place of great power. It is a narrow chasm, its walls carved by an ancient river, and on the smooth, sheltered rock faces there are paintings. But these are not like the paintings in your cave. They are older, so much older that the colors have faded to ghostly whispers. You see vast herds of animals, some of which you have never seen alive. Great, hairy elephants with long, curving tusks and lions with immense, shaggy manes. You see human figures, stick-like and small, dwarfed by the magnificent beasts they hunt. It is a library of time, a story written on stone that stretches back beyond the reach of Oma's oldest songs. You and Kale stand there in awed silence. You touch the faded outline of a horse, its legs captured in a perfect, graceful gallop. You feel a connection, a resonance, with the unknown artist who stood in this exact spot, perhaps 10,000 winters ago, and felt the same need to capture the spirit of this world. You are not the first. You are part of a story so vast, so ancient, it humbles you. They were us, Kale says softly, his voice full of reverence. And we are them. It is a profound realization that the fire you keep is the same fire they kept. The spirits you honor are the same. The great, unbroken chain of life feels tangible in this sacred place. This discovery changes something inside you. The world feels larger, deeper, more mysterious. Your own life, your own struggles and triumphs, feel both incredibly small and infinitely significant. You are a tiny spark in a great, roaring bonfire that has been burning for eons. The thought is not frightening, it is comforting. It gives your life a context, a meaning that extends beyond the daily struggle for survival. As spring deepens, turning the world into a riot of green, a new challenge arises. A sickness, a fever that brings a burning heat and a deep, rattling cough begins to move through the clan. It starts with the very young and the very old. Nari is one of the first to fall ill again, her small body racked with fever. Oma, too, is weakened, her usual strength fading, her breath becoming shallow. The fear that had been banished by the successful hunt returns, this time in a more insidious form. This is an enemy you cannot fight with a spear. Oma, though weak, directs the clan's response. She instructs the women on which herbs to gather, the willow bark for the fever, the lungwort for the cough. She has you keep the fire burning hot and clean, day and night, believing the pure, dry heat will fight the sickness in the air. The cave becomes a sick house, the air thick with the smell of herbal infusions and the sound of pained coughing. You work tirelessly, ensuring the fire never falters, that a steady supply of hot, boiled water is always ready. You feel a desperate, renewed sense of responsibility. You beat the storm of snow, but can you beat this invisible storm that attacks from within? You sit by Oma's side, trying to coax her to drink a warm tea. Her hand, usually so strong and steady, trembles in yours. Her eyes are clouded with fever, but they are still sharp. "The fire," she whispers, her voice a dry rasp. "It is not an—" Her question hangs in the air, a terrible admission of the limits of your power, of your knowledge. For the first time, you feel a true, profound— The fire can warm a body, but it cannot heal it. The stories can soothe a spirit, but they cannot banish a fever. There are forces in the world, you realize, that are beyond your control. "We do what we can," you say, your voice thick with an emotion you cannot name. "We keep the fire bright. We sing the songs. We trust the spirits." She closes her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. "A good answer, fire keeper," she murmurs. "A good answer." The sickness takes 2 lives. An infant, born just before the great storm, and an old hunter named Gresh, whose lungs were already weak. The sorrow that descends upon the clan is a quiet, heavy thing. There is no great wailing, but a deep, shared grief that is visible in every downturned face, every slowed movement. The bodies are treated with reverence, wrapped in the finest hides, and placed in a deep crevice at the back of the cave, surrounded by tools and offerings to aid them on their journey to the spirit world. A final story is told, a story of their lives, their great deeds, their small kindnesses. It is a way of weaving their spirits into the eternal fire of the clan's memory. Oma, however, begins to recover. Slowly, day by day, her fever recedes and her strength returns. Her survival feels like a turning point. If she, the eldest, the wisest, can overcome the sickness, then there is hope for everyone. Her recovery lifts the heavy blanket of grief, allowing the light to filter back in. One evening, as she sits once more in her familiar spot by the fire, she beckons you over. She looks old, more fragile than before the sickness, but her eyes have regained their familiar clarity and power. She holds a small, smooth river stone in her palm. On its surface, she has scratched a design with a sharp piece of flint. It is a spiral, a symbol of the turning seasons, of life, death, and rebirth. "For you," she says, pressing it into your hand. The stone is still warm from her touch. A keeper must have his own tools, his own magic. You look at the simple, beautiful object. It is more than a stone. It is a symbol of her trust, of the knowledge she has passed to you. "The world gives us gifts," she says, her voice regaining some of its old, dry strength. "The sun, the rain, the stag. But it also gives us challenges, the storm, the hunger, the sickness. One cannot exist without the other. This is the great balance. A true keeper does not just celebrate the gifts. He learns from the challenges. He understands the balance. You have learned this in your short time. You are no longer just a boy. You are a man of your people." You close your hand around the stone, its smooth surface a comfort against your skin. You have been through the fire, both literally and figuratively. You have faced the cold, the hunger, the fear, the sickness, the grief. And you are still here. The fire is still here. The clan is still here. You look into the flames, but you see more than just burning wood. You see the faces of your clan. You see the red ochre stag. You see the ghostly animals on the ancient chasm wall. You see the long, unbroken chain stretching back into the darkness, and forward into a future you cannot imagine. You feel the weight of it all, not as a burden, but as an anchor, a solid, unshakable connection to the very heart of the world. You are the fire keeper, and the fire, you now know, will burn forever. The passing of the sickness leaves a scar on the clan, a quiet space where 2 souls used to be. But spring, relentless and beautiful, pours its healing balm over the world and over your hearts. The days grow longer, warmer. The herds of bison and wild horse return to the greening plains below your hilltop cave, their movements a promise of renewed abundance. The rhythm of life, once dictated by the desperate need to survive, now shifts to a more confident tempo of thriving. You are fully a hunter now, your place beside Kale solidified not by age, but by skill and instinct. The two of you become a team, your knowledge of the forest and his unmatched tracking ability a powerful combination. You learn to think like your prey, to anticipate its movements, to understand its fears. But your time as the lone fire keeper has left an indelible mark on you. You see the world differently than the other hunters. They see an animal and think of meat and hide. You see it and think of the spirit within, the life force that animates it, a fire as real and as vital as the one in your cave. This perspective gives you a strange advantage. It gives you a patience, a reverence that often allows you to get closer to the prey than anyone else. One day you and Kale track a wild aurochs, a massive primeval bull with horns like sharpened moons. It is a dangerous animal, notoriously aggressive and powerful. The other hunters are wary, advising a retreat, but Kale trusts your judgment. You spend a full day just watching the beast from a distance, learning its habits, its territory. You notice it favors a particular salt lick near the river. You see the path it takes each evening. You do not see an enemy to be conquered. You see a great and powerful spirit whose patterns can be understood. Using this knowledge, you and Kale devise a plan not of confrontation, but of strategy. You dig a deep pit along its path, carefully camouflaging it with branches and turf. It is a technique learned from the old stories, a method rarely used because of the immense labor involved. For 2 days, you and the other hunters work, your hands raw from digging with sharpened sticks and the shoulder blades of deer. When it is done, you wait. The bull comes at dusk, as you knew it would. It moves with a confident, lumbering gait, unaware of the trap. The moment its great weight falls upon the flimsy covering of the pit is a moment of shocking, terrifying violence. The earth gives way with a great crash, and the beast bellows in rage and confusion. The hunt that follows is still dangerous, but the outcome is now certain. The clan has meat for another moon, and your status as a hunter of great cunning is sealed. But it is not the glory of the hunt that stays with you. It is the memory of the bull's eyes in its final moment. You saw not just fear, but a fierce, untamable spirit. That night, as the clan feasts, you take a piece of charcoal from the fire. On a smooth, prepared hide, you begin to draw. You are not a painter like Kale, but you feel a deep, urgent need to record what you saw. You draw the power of the bull, the curve of its horns, the fury in its eyes. It is your way of honoring it, of making peace with the life you have taken. Oma watches you, her expression unreadable. She does not praise your drawing, but she nods, a gesture of understanding. You are tending to the fire within, just as she taught you. As summer reaches its peak, the days long and hot, a new kind of event comes to your world. Strangers. They are a small band, a family of 6, who appear one day at the hunters spot them first, and the clan is instantly on alert. Strangers can mean many things: trade, new blood, new stories. They can also mean conflict, competition for resources, violence. A tense meeting is held on the neutral ground between your cave and the river. Kale, as the lead hunter, and Oma, as the elder, you and the other hunters watch from the cover of the trees, your spears ready. The strangers are thin, their clothes ragged. Their leader, a tall man with a heavily scarred face, speaks with a gesture-filled language, his words in a dialect that is difficult to understand. He tells a story of his own clan's misfortune, a sickness, a fire that destroyed their winter stores, a hunt that failed. They are starving, seeking shelter. There is a great debate in your clan that night. Boar and some of the other hunters are suspicious. Resources are precious. To take in 6 more mouths is a risk. What if their story is a lie? What if they are scouts for a larger, hostile group? But you, remembering the desperation of the great storm, the gnawing fear of hunger, speak up. Your voice is quiet, but it carries a new authority. We have plenty, you say. The spirits of the hunt have been good to us. To turn them away is to dishonor the gifts we have been given. It would be bad balance. Your words, especially the phrase bad balance, seem to resonate with Oma and the other elders. It is a concept they understand deeply. Generosity is not just kindness. It is a way of keeping the world in harmony. To hoard abundance is to invite scarcity. The decision is made. The strangers will be allowed to stay for a time. Their integration is slow and careful. They are given a space at the far end of the cave. They share in the food, and they are expected to share in the work. The man, whose name is Tarn, is a skilled flint knapper. His spear points are of a different style than yours, fluted in a way that makes them fly truer. Your hunters watch him with a mixture of suspicion and professional interest. His wife, Isha, knows of different herbs than Oma, plants that can soothe a troubled stomach or ease a headache. The two old women spend long hours together, cautiously exchanging their knowledge. A silent, powerful diplomacy taking place. You find yourself drawn to one of the strangers, a young woman named Lyra. She is quiet, with eyes that seem to hold the deep sadness of her clan's recent past. She is a gifted storyteller, but her stories are different from yours. They are not grand epics of creation, but smaller, more personal tales of trickster rabbits and stubborn mountain goats. They are filled with a quiet humor and a gentle wisdom. You find yourself spending your evenings near her, listening, sharing pieces of your own story. You show her the painting of the stag, and she shows you a small, beautifully carved bird made from a piece of antler she wears around her neck. You are from different worlds, yet you find a common language in your shared need to create, to remember. The presence of the strangers changes the clan. It is like a new color being added to a familiar painting. There are new skills to learn, new stories to hear, new melodies to add to the old songs. But there is also a low-grade, persistent tension. Old habits are disrupted. Minor conflicts erupt over shared tools or sleeping space. Boar remains deeply suspicious of Tarn, seeing him as a rival. The turning point comes during a mammoth hunt. The opportunity is too great to ignore. A lone mammoth, old and separated from its herd, has been spotted in the valley. A hunt of this magnitude requires the skill and strength of every able-bodied adult. It is the ultimate test of cooperation. Tarn and his two sons, though not formally invited, show up with their spears, their faces grim and determined. Boar scoffs, but Kale, ever the pragmatist, nods his acceptance. More spears are always welcome. The hunt is a terrifying, brutal affair that lasts from sunup to sundown. The mammoth is a mountain of muscle and fury. It charges, its great tusks scything through the air. A hunter is thrown, his leg broken. Chaos erupts. It is Tarn who restores order. With a series of sharp, guttural commands, he directs the hunters to flank the beast, to use the terrain to their advantage. His knowledge of hunting these great beasts clearly extensive. At a critical moment, as the mammoth turns to charge Kale, Boar, who had been hesitant, throws his spear with all his might, creating the distraction needed for Kale to land a decisive. In the end, the great beast falls. The clan is victorious, but the cost has been high. As you all stand there, exhausted, blood-splattered and covered in dust, a new kind of silence falls. Boar walks over to Tarn. He does not speak. He simply clasps the stranger's forearm, a universal gesture of respect among hunters. Tarn clasps his back. In that moment, the tension that has simmered for weeks finally breaks. They are no longer strangers. They are hunters of the same clan, survivors of the same battle. The feast that follows is legendary. It is a celebration not just of the meat that will feed you for a season, but of the forging of a new, stronger clan. The songs that are sung are a mix of your own and the strangers. The stories told are of the great hunt, where every person's contribution is honored. Lyra sits beside you and her hand finds yours in the shadows. It feels natural, right? That night after the celebrations have ended and the fire has been banked, You lie on your sleeping furs, the sounds of the expanded clan a comforting murmur around you. You look at the fire's soft glow. You had once thought your duty was to a single flame, a single group of 27 people. You now understand that the circle of the fire can grow. It can welcome others. It can become stronger, brighter by sharing its warmth. Your world has become larger, more complex, more vibrant. And as you drift off to sleep, your hands still feeling the warmth of Lyra's, you understand that this, too, is part of the balance. The fire is not meant to be hoarded. It is meant to be shared. With trembling hands, I retrieved the data slate. I activated it. In the vast, dead cavern, amidst the mountains of forgotten technology, the simple, acoustic melody began to play. The woman's gentle voice filled the silence, singing of the sun and the green grass. It was a flower blooming on a battlefield, a single candle in a universe of darkness. The archivist, who had been perfectly still, shuddered. It was a violent, convulsive tremor that shook his entire throne of wires and junk. The milky augmetics on his face flickered, glowing with a faint, amber light that mirrored the light of the slate. A wave of data, raw and overwhelming, flowed from him and crashed into my mind. It was not a voice, but a torrent of images, feelings, and fragmented knowledge. An echo, the static in my head, was now laced with something like pain, something like longing. An echo of the green time, before the concrete, before the iron, before the sky was stolen. I saw what he showed me. I saw visions of Terra as it was in a time before history. A world of vast green oceans and blue. I saw people, their skin tanned by a real sun, working in fields of golden grain. They were singing. They were not singing hymns of praise to a distant emperor. They were singing to the soil, to the rain, to the cycle of the seasons. They believed the world itself, the planet, was alive and sacred. A living God. Their faith was in the dirt beneath their feet and the sky above their head. They were the last. The archivist's thoughts were a lament. The last of the agrarian cultures. They stood in the way of unity. They stood in the way of progress. Their world had to be paved over to build the foundations of the hives. Their faith had to be exterminated to make way for the imperial truth. The emperor brought unity. He brought progress. And his progress required that the green world die. He buried it under a mountain of iron and faith. The images faded, leaving me on my knees, shaking. The weight of his words, the truth he had shown me, was a physical blow that crushed the air from my lungs. The lullaby, it was not just a forgotten song from a bygone era, it was a hymn, a holy text, the last remnant of a dead faith in a lost world. It was a testament to a genocide that had been so total, so absolute, that it had been erased from history itself. And I, Kalen, 734 Theta, a janitor of memory for the very regime that had committed this crime, was now its sole living heir. The last priest. I looked down at the small, wooden slate in my hand. It was no longer just an anomaly. It was a holy relic. The calligrapher had not just been hiding a sentimental artifact. He had been preserving the last echo of a faith that had been systematically obliterated 10,000 years ago. He and his family, for generations, had been silent guardians of this impossible truth. And now, he had passed it to me. The machine does not like its ghosts to walk, little scribe. The archivist's thoughts were a final, cold warning. You have listened to the song of the dead earth. Now its murderers will hear your footsteps. They will feel the grit of this memory in their perfect, sterile machine. You have brought this truth back into the light. Now you will be hunted by the darkness. Go flee, they are already listening. The amber light in his eyes faded. The wave of his consciousness receded, leaving only the hissing of his rebreather in the vast silence. His warning echoed in the sudden emptiness of my mind. They are already listening. My unauthorized journey, my heretical data searches. I had been a fool to think they would go unnoticed for long. The system's immune response would be slow, methodical, and utterly implacable. The hunt was on. A cold dread, far deeper and more primal than the fear I had felt in the sump, settled into the marrow of my... The archivist's warning was not a prophecy. It was a statement of fact. The Adeptus Administratum was a slow, ponderous beast, but its memory was absolute and its reach was infinite. My 3-cycle pass was a countdown clock to my own erasure. The journey back was a fever dream of paranoia. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every distant clang of metal sounded like the footstep of an enforcer. The sump, which had seemed so terrifying on my descent, now felt almost like a sanctuary compared to the cold, orderly world I was returning to. In the lawless dark, you could see your enemies. In the world of light and bureaucracy, your executioner would be an algorithm you would never meet, triggered by a report you would. As my service elevator ascended, leaving the stench and the chaos of the underhive behind, I felt a profound sense of leaving a part of myself behind. The Kalen who had descended was a frightened functionary clutching a secret. The Kalen who was now rising was the guardian of a truth that could shatter worlds, a truth that had already shattered his own. When the elevator doors opened onto the pristine, silent concourse of my own sublevel, the transition was jarring. The clean, recycled air felt thin and sterile in my lungs after the thick, organic miasma of the sump. The constant, even lumen light seemed blinding. I was a creature of the depths now, blinking in the unwelcome glare of the cave. And then I saw them. They were standing at the far end of the concourse, beside the entrance to the pneumatic transport hub. 2 of them, their forms were unmistakable, iconic in their menace. The black, gleaming carapace armor of the Adeptus Arbites. The emotionless, visored helms that hid any trace of humanity. They were not looking in my direction. They were simply present. A function of the environment, as natural and as terrifying as a predator on the savannah. They were symbols of order, and I was now a creature of chaos. My blood ran cold. I forced myself to walk, not run. My pace had to be steady, efficient, unremarkable. To deviate would be to signal guilt. I kept my eyes forward, my posture erect, every inch the dutiful functionary returning from an assignment. As I passed them, I could feel their helmeted gaze sweep over me, a passive, analytical scan. Did they know? Was my name all? I reached my designated transport tube without incident. The hiss of the door closing behind me, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. But I knew this was not an escape. It was a temporary reprieve. The archivist was right. The machine was aware of its ghost. It was moving to correct its error. My hab unit, once a sanctuary of sterile solitude, now felt like a tomb. It was a trap. The walls seemed to be closing in, the single lumen strip a glaring spotlight on my guilt. They did not storm my door. That is not their way. The Administratum's methods are more subtle, more psychologically corrosive. They let you sit in the silence, knowing they are coming. They let you stew in your own fear. They let you contemplate the end of not just your life, but your own identity. They give you time to understand the absolute futility of your actions. My terror was absolute, a high, thin screaming in the back of my mind. But beneath it, a strange, cold clarity began to form. They could take my body. They could break it, burn it, dispose of it. But that wasn't what they truly wanted. I was a mnemonic scourer. I knew what the punishment would be for my crime. They would not simply kill me. That would be inefficient. Death leaves a ghost, a memory in the minds of others. Their goal was total erasure. They would perform a mnemonic scour, a process that would wipe my mind clean of every memory, every thought, every trace of the being known as Kalen. They would turn me into a servitor, my body repurposed to serve the very system I had defied, my mind a perfect, horrifying blank. And the song, the lullaby, the last hymn of a dead world would die with my consciousness. It would vanish as if that was the one thing I could not allow. My own life, my own identity had become secondary. I was a vessel, a temporary guardian. The song had survived 10 millennia in darkness, passed down through a chain of silent, dedicated souls. It would not die in my head. My hands flew across the illicit data terminal I had jury-rigged, my panic giving way to a desperate, focused energy. I had to get the song out. I had to preserve it, to plant a seed of it somewhere that the scourers could not. But how? Broadcasting it on the general Voxnet was impossible. It would be detected and silenced in nanoseconds. Storing it in some hidden data cache was equally futile. The machine search demons would find it. I couldn't fight the system with its own weapons. It was too big, too powerful, too omniscient. I needed to hide it not in the darkness, but in plain sight, in the light. My mind raced, sifting through the dregs of my own memory, the 10,000 days of consignments and work orders I had processed. I was looking for a loophole, a forgotten corner, a place of such profound monotony and insignificance that no one ever paid it any real attention. And then I found it, a memory of a work order I had processed weeks ago, so mundane I had barely registered it. Requisition M77 Beta. Installation and sanctification of a new Series 9 servitor choir for the Cathedral of the Emperor's Blessed Silence. The Cathedral of the Emperor's Blessed Silence. It was a deep-level, rarely visited place of worship in a sector that was slowly. It was maintained not for a living congregation, but as an archival requirement, a box to be ticked on some master list of holy sites. The servitor choir's function was not to inspire the faithful, but simply to exist, to sing praises to the emperor. Endlessly in a forgotten corner of the world, their mindless chants a constant, unheard prayer to the machine god. Their minds, like mine would soon be, were wiped clean. They were blank slates. The plan was insane, born of pure desperation. I could not replace their core programming, the sacred litanies of praise they were designed to chant. To do so would be a complex act of tech heresy far beyond my limited skills, and one that would be immediately detected. But I could add to it. I accessed the source code for the Series 9 choir's vocal programming, a file I still had cached from processing the original. The code was a wall of impenetrable machine script, a sacred text of the Adeptus Mechanicus. But music at its core is mathematics. It is patterns, frequencies, and rhythms, and I was a man of numbers and patterns. Working feverishly, I began to translate the lullaby. I converted the simple melody into a recursive, subharmonic data loop. It was not a replacement for the main liturgy, but an undercurrent, a ghost in the holy machine. I embedded it deep in the source code, masking it as a series of diagnostic and resonance balancing subroutines. The song would not be heard, not truly. The primary sound would still be the deep, guttural, monotonous chanting of praise to the emperor. But beneath that chant, woven into its very fabric, would be the faint, sad, simple melody of the lullaby, a subharmonic that the ear would not consciously register, but that the soul might feel. A sad, strange, inexplicable melancholy in the river of devotion. It would be a heresy sung by the mindless for no one forever, an eternal, unnoticed echo in an empty room. It was a pathetic victory. It was a meaningless gesture in the face of the crushing, indifferent power of the Imperium. It was a single tear and it was everything. I finalized the code. My target was the central programming spire that would upload the new liturgy to the choir before their activation. I had a window of mere minutes. I routed the upload command through a dozen layers of anonymizing proxies, a flimsy shield against the coming storm. My fingers hovered over the execute command. That's when I heard it, the sound I had been dreading, a high-pitched, metallic whine from the corridor outside my hab unit door. The sound of a multi-torch cutting through plasteel. They were here. The whine of the multi-torch was the last sound I would hear as myself. It was the sound of my world ending. My entire universe narrowed to the small, amber-lit screen of the ancient data slate, and the cold, blue glow of my illicit terminal. The code was ready. The lullaby was ready. I could hear the barked commands of the Arbeit's officers in the hall, their voices distorted by their helmet Vox grills. Breach in 30 seconds. My world narrowed to a single line of light on my screen, a progress bar. I hit execute. Uploading. The letters glowed on the screen. The cutting torch on the door screamed, a counterpoint to the silent prayer I was sending into the digital ether. 12%. A heavy thud against the door. They were using a battering ram now. 34%. I thought of the calligrapher, 427 Beta Psi. I thought of his ancestor, Erastus. I thought of the generations of their family who had guarded this fragile secret. They had passed the flame to me. I would not let it be extinguished. 58%, 78%, 89%. The symbols I had crafted were more than just code. They were a forgotten language, transmitting a dead faith into the very heart of the machine that had killed it. They were a seed of green grass, planted in the cracks of a ferrocrete continent. The whine of the torch was deafening now. The air in my small room was thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. 99%. The door buckled inward, a grotesque flower of molten plasteel blooming around the edges. A sliver of black carapace was visible. Upload complete. The words flashed green. It was done. I leaned back against the cold wall, a strange, profound calm washing over me. All the fear, all the panic was gone. I had done it. I had become the thing I was meant to destroy, a memory that would persist. I had taken the last ember of a murdered world and hidden it in the Emperor's own choir. The door crashed inward with an explosive boom. The room was filled with black-clad figures, their hotshot lasguns leveled at my chest. I did not raise my hands. I did not speak. I simply looked at them, and for the first time in my life I felt I had already won. They did not speak. They were functions, not men. An algorithm had sent them, and they were here to execute a command. I was data to be deleted. Two of them seized me, their armored gloves like vices on my arms. They dragged me from my room, past the smoking ruin of my door. I saw them confiscate the ancient slate, their gloved hands treating it with a detached curiosity, an anomalous piece of evidence to be catalogued and, eventually, incinerated. I felt a pang of loss, not for myself, but for the beautiful object. They took me to a Medikey facility deep within the Arbeits precinct house. It was not a place of healing. It was a laboratory of subtraction. They strapped me to a cold metal chair. A complex helmet, a web of wires and needles and arcane mechanics descended from the ceiling. I had read about it in procedural manuals. I had never imagined I would see one up close. A Medikey in a sterile white coat, his face hidden behind a surgical mask, prepped a series of injectors. He did not look me in the eye. I was not a person. I was a faulty component being prepared for recalibration. As the scour helm was lowered onto my head, its cold metal touching my temples, I closed my eyes. I did not think of my name, or my station, or my 10,000 days of service. I remembered the touch of the smooth, dark slate. I remembered the archivist's static voice in my head. I remembered the vision of a green world under a blue sky. I held onto the woman's voice, singing her gentle lullaby to a forgotten child. It was the last beautiful thing. Then the process began. It was not pain. Pain is a sensation, a signal. This was subtraction, a cold, clinical emptiness that spread from the back of my skull forward. It was like watching a library burn in reverse. The books did not turn to ash. They simply vanished from the shelves, leaving perfect. My memories of the sump, the cavern, the archivist, they dissolved first. The images of rust and decay and forgotten machines evaporated into nothingness. My memories of the search, the forbidden queries, the thrill of discovery, they blinked out of existence. My memory of the calligrapher, of the feel of the slate in my hand, turned to smoke. My name, Kalen, 734 Theta, the anchor of my entire existence, unraveled and became a meaningless string of characters. The song was the last to go. I clung to it, to the simple, haunting melody. It was the final flickering candle in the hurricane of my unmaking. The Medikey's machine was relentless. It pulled at the melody, note by note, unraveling it like a thread. The woman's voice grew faint, distant. The words about the sun and the moon lost their meaning. The melody faded until all that was left was silence. A perfect, ordered, blessed silence. The final scene is not mine to see, for I no longer exist, but it happens nonetheless. Deep in the forgotten heart of Terra, In a cavernous, empty cathedral, a new servitor choir stands in a silent, perfect line. Their faces are blank, their eyes vacant. They are new machines awaiting their first command. A signal is sent from a distant programming spire. An activation rune glows on the master control panel. And they begin their chant to the Emperor. Their mouths open and close in perfect, mindless unison. The sound that emerges is a deep, guttural, monotonous drone. It is the sound of pure, unthinking devotion, the official and only song of the Imperium. The sound echoes in the vast, dark space, a prayer heard by no one. But if you could be there, in that forgotten place, and if you were to listen very, very closely, if you were to filter out the crushing weight of the primary chant and focus on the spaces in between the sound, on the almost imperceptible frequencies beneath the drone, you might hear it. A faint, sad, simple melody, a ghost in the machine, a lullaby for a world that is dead. It's there, an echo in eternity. What is it really like to live on Terra? It is to be a ghost in the greatest tomb in the galaxy, a single, silent soul lost in the machinery of a dying empire. It is to know that your life is a rounding error, in a calculation that spans millennia. But sometimes, if you listen closely, in the deepest silence between the endless prayers and the turning of the great machine, you can still hear the dead sing. I have ended it, I corrected him, turning from the console to face him, my last pistol held steady in my... He stalked into the room, his power sword humming with deadly energy. You are a child playing with a thunderhammer. You have no conception of what you are destroying. I know exactly what I'm destroying, I said calmly, as the ground shook with a violent tremor. I'm destroying your dream, Inquisitor, and I am cleansing this. Our final battle was not a duel. It was a brawl in a collapsing tomb. He was a force of nature, his power sword a blur of blue energy, carving chunks from the machinery around me. I was a ghost, a survivor, dodging and weaving, using the shaking, dying environment as my ally. I fired my last pistol not at him, but at the power conduits above his head, bringing down a shower of sparks and molten metal that forced him back. He swatted a falling server rack aside, as if it were a child's toy, and kept coming. The countdown on the screen passed the 1-minute mark. The shaking was constant now, the roar of the overloading generators a physical blow. A lancing pain erupted in my side as a piece of shrapnel from an exploding console tore through my tunic. I stumbled, my vision blurring. Valerius was on me in an instant. He backhanded me with his armored gauntlet, sending me crashing against the main console. My last pistol flew from my grasp. The world swam in a haze of red. He stood over me, his power sword raised, its hum the song of my death. It did not have to be this way, Sergeant, he said, his voice laced with a cold, clinical regret. I offered you a place in the new world. I looked up at him, a bloody grin spreading across my face. And I offered you a Vestroyan's end, I coughed, blood flecking my lips. With my last ounce of strength, I lunged not at him, but at the console behind me. My bloodied hand slammed down on the master override switch, the final, manual trigger for the scouring protocol. The countdown vanished, replaced by a single, pulsing rune, ACTUATED. Valerius' single, glowing eye widened in horrified realization. He had no time to scream. The world dissolved into white light. The overload did not come as fire, or thunder, or pain. It came as silence. A silence so pure and so absolute that it was the loudest thing I had ever experienced. The crushing weight of the calm, the psychic hum of the entity, the screams of the dying, the roar of the generators, the hum of the power sword, all of it was gone. Erased. In that final, eternal moment, as the very fabric of the planet was unwritten around me, I could feel again. For the first time since I arrived on this cursed world, I could truly feel. I felt the grief for the brothers I had lost on a dozen worlds, a clean, sharp pain that I had held at bay for decades. I felt the rage at the Inquisitor, at the Imperium, at the monstrous lie I had served my entire life. I felt a flicker of regret for the life I had never known, for the Vestroyan snow I would never see again. I felt a surge of cold, grim pride for the choice I had made. All the emotions that the calm had tried to smother, that I had disciplined into submission, came rushing back in a final, glorious, agonizing wave. It was the gift of being human, returned to me in the instant. They tell you they send you to paradise to heal. But the shocking reality of Xylos, the final, terrible truth, was not the corruption, or the heresy, or the sleeping monster beneath the ground. It was that in a galaxy defined by endless, soul-crushing war, the most horrific, unnatural, and blasphemous thing imaginable was a world without feeling. They had tried to take my pain, and in doing so, they had tried to take my soul. My final act, my final choice, was to feel it all, one last time. I died not as a hero of the Imperium, but as a man. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, that was a victory.